Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. We're a podcast about board games where we have opinions and conclusions formed on the basis of incomplete information. This episode of Cardboard Conjecture is brought to you by these great Saskatoon businesses: Amazing Stories Comics on 8th Street, Dragon's Den Games on 8th Street, and Breakout Escape Rooms on Faithful Avenue. Hey there, how's it going, eh? This is What You've Been Playing Wednesday, and this is a special weekly episode where a bunch of us content creators come together and let you know what we've been playing recently. And on this episode are Board on the Air, the Tabletop Bellhop, MistaRau Rants and Reviews, Meeple and the Moose, the Meeple Dungeon, Bridge City Boardgamers Community, and Cardboard Conjecture. And as always, please remember to take the time to check out the links to the What You've Been Playing Wednesday cast. And, like I always say, sit back and enjoy. Eh?
Hello and welcome to the Tabletop Bellhop segment of What You've Been Playing Wednesday. I am Moe T, the Tabletop Bellhop, your cardboard concierge, answering your gaming and game night questions and striving to make everyone's gaming experience better. If you've got a gaming or game night question for me, send it to questions@tabletopbellhop.com. Visit our webpage and click on Ask the Bellhop, or hit me up on social media where I can be found everywhere as Tabletop Bellhop, one word. Now, of course, the question I'm answering today is what you've been playing this past week. Well, first up was Game 8 of Charterstone, which I don't want to say too much about as I don't want to spoil anything for the 5 of you out there who haven't played this yet. Now, what I will say is that for some reason, this was our longest game ever. We had actually planned to play 2 games of Charterstone and move on to some other games, but this one game went long. We didn't time it, but it was at least 3 hours. And that, honestly, was enough Charterstone for one sitting. Not that we don't like the game. Actually, so far, we're really enjoying the game. And one thing that I've noticed now that we're 8 games in that's been pretty interesting is the wins. The actual wins for the individual games are starting to spread around a lot more. Now, I did grab some quick wins early in the campaign, but everyone else is starting to catch up. And actually, at the end of this game, a player who hadn't won any games yet actually won the last 2 in a row, so definitely keeping them in contention. Now, one tip for anyone playing this game. Don't do what we did and forget what the king wants you to do. Like, while we remembered how to get that little bit of a reward, we kind of forgot that there was more to it than that and really pissed off the king. And, well, honestly, we pissed off the king quite a bit. So far, with only 4 games left in the campaign, I don't even know if we can even get back in the king's favor, which is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to see what happens. And I got to say, is one of the big things that's going to make me want to play the game again and maybe get the recharge pack to see what would happen if we did keep the king happy. Though I got to say, I'm kind of cool with pissing off the king because he doesn't seem like a very nice guy to me anyway. So I have a theory that I'm waiting to see how it pans out at the end of the campaign. Now, after Charterstone, we played another round of Founders of Teotihuacan. This was at least the second play for everyone at the table, so it made for a much more enjoyable experience than our previous plays. I'm still loving the action selection bidding system in the game. And I've been enjoying trying different strategies, trying to just build up the pyramid and score temples, or try to just score lots and lots of the god tiles, like get lots of blue and red tiles and score them as quickly as possible and as often as possible. Or just using gold and stuff, other resources and so on. And I gotta say, it's been really enjoyable to try different strategies and see that they all do seem pretty valid. Now, I do still have to say, in regards to this game in particular, seeing as it's a follow-up to Teotihuacan, City of the Gods, I will admit, I would rather play Teotihuacan, City of the Gods. Now, the thing is, that's a 2 to 4 hour game, depending on who you're playing with. So I do enjoy that I can get a game of Founders done in a much shorter time, like an hour and a half a game. Now, my wife, on the other hand, despite winning almost every game we played, hasn't been enjoying Founders as much as I have. To her, it's an okay game. It's all right, but it's not something she's going to pick out to play on game night, which fair enough. I'm still looking at getting a couple more plays in. I think there's a solo set of rules, so I want to try those before I get a final review. That may be coming next week or the week after. Now, the last game we got to the table this past week was The Goonies Escape with One-Eyed Willie's Rich Stuff, a Coded Chronicles game, which we finally finished on Sunday. Now, since this is an escape room in a box-style game, I really don't want to spoil anything. Charterstone, I think people have shared pictures and some of the info is kind of out there, whereas this kind of game, you definitely don't want anything spoiled. So I just want to mention 2 things. 1, use the clues. Use the starter clues. There are 3 levels of clues in this game. You don't get penalized for using the first level. Honestly, I think some of them are needed to solve the puzzles. There was a particular puzzle that I don't think any of us at the table, and we were playing with 5 of us, would have figured out without using that first clue. Now, these first clues don't spoil anything. They just present useful information to make sure you're thinking about things the right way. Finally, be warned that Chapter 2 is rather short. So we split our campaign, our play of this game over 3 settings. There's 3 chapters. We played 1 chapter a night over the last few weeks on Sundays. Chapter 1's fairly long. Chapter 2 was over and done with pretty quick. It ended up being a short night for us. Chapter 3, though, which is what we finished Sunday, is very long. Well, very long in comparison to the other 2. It wasn't a huge long game night, not like 3 hours or anything, but it did take us longer to do than any of the other 2 chapters, which we ended up going later than we wanted to. So make sure you've got plenty of time during that last session of play to get it done. Now, for us, we ended up keeping up the kids way later, way past their bedtime to finish up, which probably wasn't the best choice. And I will honestly say I can't see any group sitting down and playing this from start to finish in one session. Like, you're going to need a dedicated game day for that. Not that it's a hugely long game, but I do recommend saving. The saving system of the game is very well done. It works really well, and it makes sure you're all ready to go when you start to play the next time. Now, for a full review of this Goonies board game escape room game from the Op, be sure to join me for tonight's recording of the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast, which of course goes live at 9 p.m. on Twitch. Now, while I'm saving my final thoughts for that show, I will say here that this is so far the most polished Coded Chronicles game so far, with none of the problems that showed up in the earlier versions. This was better play tested. You can tell it had been play tested more. It had gone through more iterations. It was better edited. I didn't see any spelling or grammar errors, and more importantly, nowhere pointed to the wrong places or there weren't missing entries or anything like that. It was honestly a joy to play through, and there were no real problems, though I gotta admit, a couple things were a little fiddly, but everything was so much better than the previous Code of Chronicles games. I'm glad to see this series of games on the right track, and I look forward to whatever comes next. But that's all I've got for this week. Before I go, a reminder, visit tabletopbellhop.com. Join us Wednesdays at Twitch, 9 p.m. Eastern, for our recording of the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast. That podcast you can find on your podcatcher of choice if you can't join us live. And I also invite you to watch YouTube on Sundays, as Sean and I often get together for a unscripted hangout, which we like to call Sunday Brunch with the Bellhop. For the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast, I am Moe T, the Tabletop Bellhop. Good night and game on.
Hey folks, Ryan here from MistaRau's Gaming Rants and Reviews, and welcome to another week of Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday, where this week we'll be chatting about a little game called Mountains Out of Molehills, designed by Patrick Marino and Jim DiCamillo, illustrated by Elena Muntz, and published in 2022 by The Op. Moles have traveled from all over to compete in the annual Mountain Maker Tournament. Competitors show their skill based on how high they can pile their molehills and by how many mountains they control. The mole that can build and control the most mountains made out of molehills over 6 rounds will be declared the top tunneler and will win the game. Mountains Out of Molehills seems to have everything to introduce families to a whack load of gaming mechanics. There's drafting, action programming, and a whole lot of take that if the game decides to go in that direction. First off, the components and table presence of this game is out of this world. This is one of those games where the board is a 3D structure of 2 boards placed on top of one another, separated by 4 pillars in the corners. The molehill pieces are nice plastic pieces that satisfyingly fit together for stacking, and the acrylic standees for the mole characters are top-notch. I'm starting to become a huge fan of the acrylic standee instead of the massive plastic miniatures. One thing we are going to upgrade on our own, though, is to replace that flat cardboard rock token with probably an actual rock from our garden. The game is played over 6 rounds, where each round is broken into 3 phases, essentially. First, there is the card drafting. 5 cards per player are laid out on the table, and then players take turns drafting 1 card at a time until all the players have 4 cards. Next, there's the planning phase. You see, those cards that were just drafted dictate how players' moles are going to move this round. Some go straight, turn left, turn right, U-turn, while some move the rock, and some knock over the other molehills above the ground. But here's the trick. The players have to decide the order in which those cards are going to activate. A sort of action programming element, because these moles can't see too well in the dark. That's the chaos of the game, much like a game like Colt Express, if you know that reference. As these moles are moving through the underground, above ground, molehills are being formed, and the more molehills created means, well, you guessed it, more points. Which leads into the scoring phase. Players will look to see if they, quote-unquote, control certain molehills, and control here means you were the last one to add to the molehill, meaning your player color is on the bottom of that molehill. Each of these molehills a player controls will score 1 point per piece part of that molehill. Record these scores and move on to the next round. and nothing resets. All those mighty molehills are now ripe for the taking in the next round. Wash, rinse, and repeat for 6 rounds to determine the top tunneler of the Mountain Maker Tournament. Mountains Out of Molehills is family fun through and through. Casual gamers will enjoy it for what it is, but I will have a feeling for more experienced players that the game will become quite repetitive after a handful of plays. Even though the game is dictated by which movement cards come out to draft every round, there isn't a lot of variety in the types of cards drafted. We've had 2-player games where amongst the 10 cards to draft from, only a couple cards actually helped us actually do anything. It's actually quite frustrating. The toppling mechanic is neat and can allow players to sneak away a few points from players. I just kind of feel the max height of a molehill each round was kind of meh, and it deterred us away from actually drafting toppling cards. Those cards almost never got drafted with us, so that might dictate more of our playstyle actually. We also feel that the game lasts probably about 1 round too long, as most of the time it's clear who's going to win this game after about 5 rounds. Overall, my family has been enjoying Mountains Out of Molehills quite a bit. We do really enjoy the getting in other moles' ways and being very passive-aggressive with one another. It's a sneaky, mean game under the cute presentation. And that's what I've been playing this week. Be sure to check out my full overview, thoughts, and review of Mountains Out of Molehills over on my YouTube channel. Just search up MistaRau's Gaming Rants and Reviews. Also, if you'd like, follow my gaming adventures on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search up at MistaRau Gaming. Okay, folks, enjoy the rest of What You've Been Playing Wednesdays.
Hello, this is Alex from MeepleandtheMoose.com, and I'm here to talk about the games I've played for What You've Been Playing Wednesday. This week was a very busy week for me, so I'm going to launch right into it. I have a lot of games to talk about. The first and biggest game I played this week was Ark Nova by designer Mathis Wiggy and published by Capstone Games in 2021. It was released only late last year, but it's already rocketing up the BGG Top 100 list, already at number 35 at the time of this recording. It'll probably be higher by the time you hear this. In Ark Nova, players are tasked with growing a zoo. The winner will be the player who best increases their attraction while also contributing to various ecological goals. The gameplay of Ark Nova is run by 5 action cards. They're pretty straightforward. The animals action lets you play animals, the build action lets you play buildings, the cards action lets you draw more cards, the assistance action lets you draw or lets you play more assistants, and the sponsor action lets you take an action from a sideboard. While that all may seem very straightforward, the Tasmanian devil is in the details. Ark Nova has a lot of details. This is not a light game. It took us about 4 hours to learn and play a 4-player game for the first time. But I could definitely see that time being reduced on subsequent plays. Each of the actions are important and situationally powerful. Below your zoo, each of your action cards will sit in a queue. When you use an action, you will get a power based on where in the queue that action is, and then move that action to the back of the line. Ideally, you'll want to be using the strongest action the most often, but sometimes you'll find yourself playing a subpar strength action simply because it's the one that you need to play. All of us enjoyed Ark Nova, and we agree that we would play it again, but I do have some qualms, especially about the randomness of the deck, and how handcuffed I felt at the end of the game. I needed to get a level 5 sponsorship action out in order to get some ecological goals and be even competitively viable in the end game, but I simply wasn't able to do so. There wasn't enough time. Another player complained that throughout the whole game, he never got a single bird card into his hand, which one of the variable goals was to play a number of bird cards, so it's extra frustrating when you never see one come through your hand. Ark Nova has garnered a lot of comparisons to Terraforming Mars, and I can see why. The potential for triggering great combos exists, with effects triggering other effects that could let you run up tracks, triggering other effects, and leaving everyone in the dust. One neat aspect to Ark Nova is that the end of the game is triggered when your 2 scoring trackers, the Conservation and the Appeal, meet. Your final score is the delta between these 2 tokens. This is cool, but has a byproduct of leaving anyone who doesn't manage to get their tokens to meet with a negative final score and a bad taste in their mouth. I'll be returning to Ark Nova soon, as I suspect some mastery of the systems will smooth out some of these criticisms. On Saturday, a friend came over and we played a bunch of games together. We played Cribbage, the 4-player variant, which I had never played before. Cribbage is an age-old game published in 1630, according to Board Game Geek. The goal of Cribbage is to get to 121 points first. You know, it feels like everyone and their grandmother has played it, but I have never played the 4-player version of this game. The 4-player version plays a lot like the 2-player version. The main difference being that you play in teams of 2, and each player receives 5 cards into their hand and only discards 1 into the crib. Play continues around and around the table, clockwise as you would expect. And while this may be a subtle rule change and difference, ended up feeling fairly significant. A lot of my tempo considerations and strategies felt like they just weren't effective in a 4-player game. Playing 4-player Cribbage was fine, especially because one of the people who were playing had to leave very shortly, so it was a great quick game. But in the future, I don't think I'll be so keen to return to it. Maybe it's just because I'm so comfortable with the 2-player experience, but I'd rather find a fast 4-player game that I actually enjoy more. The next game we played was Cacao by Phil Walker Harding. Cacao is a quick tile-laying game about harvesting and selling cacao fruits. On your turn, you place one of your village tiles adjacent to a jungle tile in the center of a shared tableau. If 2 worker tiles are adjacent to an empty space, you get to place a new jungle tile. Each of your village tiles will have workers depicted along the edges of the tile, and every jungle tile will have an action associated on it or depicted on it. The number of workers on your tile would dictate how many times you can take the action of the jungle tile. Now, I love Cacao, especially the way the checkerboard of tiles looks at the end of the game. It's straightforward, it's friendly, and I've had success playing this with gamers and non-gamers alike. Everyone seems to enjoy Cacao. The theme of building a village in the jungle and harvesting cacao fruits is fairly weak, but that's fine. Mechanically, it's very solid and a great next step game from other tile-laying games such as Carcassonne. If you haven't played it before, I highly suggest you give it a try. After that, another person left the game table and we were left with just the 2 of us. So we played a couple 2-player games back to back to back to back. The first 2-player game we played was Abstract Academy by Molly Johnson, Robert Melvin, and Sean Stankiewicz, the same group who brought out Point Salad. Abstract Academy is a card game for 2 or 4 players where you're playing paint cards to a shared tableau in the center of the board, or center of the table. Once a 4x4 grid of cards is complete, the scoring objectives for the round will be evaluated, 3 rounds and a lot of scoring objectives to chase, and the player with the highest score is the winner. Abstract Academy was a little more complex than I had anticipated. Playing the game was fairly straightforward, but playing well seemed to elude me. As you play cards from your hand into the center of the table, the 4x4 grid isn't set until the X and Y axis are complete, until you have 4 cards across and 4 cards up and down, meaning that a card I played that I expected to be part of my scoring, my opponent could play a card closer towards me and push the overall canvas closer to him. It was quite the challenge, and it requires the level of abstract thinking that I just wasn't able to visualize in my first play. I enjoyed the game. I'm looking forward to playing more soon and taking a deeper look into this abstract game. After Abstract Academy, we played Crokinole, which is just a fun dexterity game. It's kind of funny because you can forget that board games are supposed to be fun. That, you get so wrapped up in playing a complex game with a lot of moving parts like Ark Nova and trying to maximize which tag you need, what animal you want to play, and amass just 3 more points in order to get the edge over your opponents. But Crokinole, you're just flicking discs at your opponent and hoping that you can sink your puck into the center of the table. This game was mildly frustrating, as every single time I was able to sink my puck in the center of the board to get that 20-point win, my opponent would immediately do the exact same thing, canceling out my victories. I think I'm going to have to spend the next couple nights just practicing my flicking. Maybe do some figurative push-ups for those moments where I need that shotgun power to clear 2 or 3 tokens from the board in one go. After Crokinole, we went to Jaipur by Sebastian Pouchon. Jaipur was one of the first games I ever purchased when my wife and I were getting into board games, and I had somewhat forgotten about this fact until I opened the game box and pulled out the well-loved deck of cards. While I hadn't played the physical version of Jaipur since 2018, I do routinely play on Board Game Arena. Luckily, I don't need to play the physical version to remember what a great game Jaipur is. I love the tension of trading cards from the market and the push and pull of either selling goods early to get the highest value versus amassing 5 goods to get those very high value bonus tokens. It's fast and fun to play, so much so that 3 games fly by in the blink of an eye. If you haven't had a chance to play Jaipur, I highly suggest you do. And the last game we played was 7 Wonders Duel by Antoine Boza and Bruno Catala. 7 Wonders Duel is the 2-player variant to the massively popular 7 Wonders game. 7 Wonders changes the formula by building out this large tableau of cards between the 2 players, and then players alternate taking one of those cards into their own civilization. The cards will represent resources, military might, economy, science, and culture. There's a couple of different ways to win in 7 Wonders Duel. You can win a scientific victory by getting 6 different science icons. You can win via a military victory by pushing the military token all the way towards your opponent's side of the board. And if neither of those 2 endgame triggers happen, then the person with the highest score come the end of the 3rd age is the winner. 7 Wonders Duel is a game that I played a lot, 30-something times with my wife. And that's before we picked up the Pantheon expansion. Personally, I like 7 Wonders Duel more than the base 7 Wonders game. And that might be blasphemy for some, but hey, that's just how I feel. I really love the back and forth play. I love how dynamic it is, and I love how I can play this game 30 times over and still not be bored of it. I always feel like I have a great handle on my civilization, but somewhere near the end of age 2, I realized I forgot to build any wood tokens, and I'm just hosed for age 3. Regardless, I have a good time every time I play. In an effort to keep this segment under an hour and a half, I went through these 7 games very quickly. If you're interested to hear more about my thoughts of each of these games, most of them have full reviews on my website, meepleandthemoose.com, and many of them I've summarized in my top 100 games as of 2020. If you're interested to hear about more of what I've said, you can check out my website, meepleandthemoose.com, or follow me on Twitter at MooseMeeple. Have a happy Wednesday.
Hello everybody, it's Rob and Anna Marie from the Meeple Dungeon.
Hello.
And we are back again recording for the What You've Been Playing Wednesdays podcast. This week we have 2 games to talk about. What's the first game we're going to talk about, Anna Marie?
The first game we're going to talk about is Ghosts of Christmas. This one is designed by Taiki Shinzawa, art by Maria Surdikan and Misaho Sugawara, and published by Board Game Tables.
Yes. Ghosts of Christmas? That's what it's called?
Yes, Ghosts of Christmas.
Okay, so Ghosts of Christmas. This game, the theme of this game revolves around the 3 spirits from
A Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol, yes. And that's the Ghost of Christmas Past, Future, and Present.
You always do that. It's past, present, future. I mean, yes, they're all the same, but like,
whatever.
Let's go in order.
Yes. What did I say? Past,
future, present.
Future, present. Yeah, okay. So this is a trick-taking game revolving around a Christmas theme. It's as strange as it sounds, but we're gonna explain to you. Anna Marie is gonna explain to you roughly how this works because she has it wrapped around her head better than I do.
Maybe we'll see.
We'll see. I'll interject here, but
so
what is it? How does it work?
Just like a normal deck of cards, you've got 4 suits. These ones all 1 to 12. So you got blue, yellow, green, and red. Red is the trump suit. Get that off right from the bat.
Yeah.
Once you get dealt your cards, you take a look at them.
And there was cards 1 to 12?
1 to 12 in each color. Yeah.
Of each color, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so once you get them dealt, you look at them and you decide right then and there how many tricks you think you're going to get. And so...
Which is no easy task.
Yeah.
Because you're wagering on yourself of how many tricks you're going to take because you're going to have a chance to take a lot of tricks, but you have to try and nail exactly how many you are going to take through this game.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly difficult to predict.
Yeah. So I can take, say, 3 tokens because I think I'm going to get 3 tricks.
Right.
If I get those exact 3 tricks, I'm going to double my points and get 6 points.
Right.
I could also take my little 3 tokens, but then a red token, which means I might get 4. So if I get 4, I would get
Still get 4
I would get,
points.
it would just be the base, but I could never get
rid
doubles.
of the doubling.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
So once you've decided how many points you think you're going to get your tricks, right? Then comes the interesting part.
Yes.
So you lay out, everybody in front of them has 3, they kind of fit together like a puzzle, just 3 lines, one for the past, one for present, and one for future. And whoever starts the round, they get to decide which card they're going to play in which round, in which slot first. So let's say you started and you put one of your cards down in past. You put a green card in the past section. Yep. So we have 3 little rondelles that for the first one, for the past rondelle, we're going to move it to show green. So that means that green is the suit that everybody has to play to for the past.
Right.
If you have to break suit because you can't play it, then you can break suit. But if you have it, you have to play it. So then you've played that. But now on my turn, I don't have to play in the past. I can choose to play a green in the past if I have a green,
yep.
or I can choose to play in the present or the future. Now, let's say I really want to win a trick, but I don't want with a green. Let's say I only have 1 green card in my hand.
Yep.
I don't have to play it in the past.
No, because you could make, say, the present green as well
right.
by placing whatever your green card is into the present.
Yes.
Now the present
rondelle thing
is of the rondelle thing is selected to green, and now every card that goes into that slot
that's
from here
the
on
lead
out
suit
has
for
to
green.
be green, unless they don't have any green cards.
Yes. So it goes around like that until all 3 suits have been selected. It might happen in the first round, or people may decide to follow suits in the past or the present.
Yep.
So maybe you've got green in the past, green in the present, and blue in the future.
Yep.
So you're going to go around playing out your hands like this. Now the interesting part happens when you're going to score or count, like see who wins the tricks. Let's say you started with green.
Yep.
Whoever, like let's say you had the green 5. You put it down. Well, you know what? I didn't play it. Our third player had a green 8. So you played your green. I didn't have one because I played mine in the next suit.
Yep.
Or the next column. Somebody else is the third person's going to win that because they had a green 8.
Yeah, you're going to go through and you're going to select.
Yeah.
The highest card is going to win unless there's a red card in there.
So, yes, unless there's a red card, a trump card, the trump would win, and the highest trump would win if more than one was played. But now that second person has won that trick, let's say that person didn't have a green, in the second column, which is what I had started. That was the suit was green. They didn't have one, so they had to lay a yellow down.
Yep.
Well, now that he's now starting the next trick, all of a sudden the next trick is no longer green as trump, but it's yellow because he's the one who's leading it at this point.
So yeah, so the basics of it is that if you win the first trick, so if you win the past, you will start.
You determine,
yeah, because if you were able to play out of the suit in, say, the present, and you won the past, now you are starting the present, and you actually get to set the color. So everyone else was playing into what we thought was
because that's how it was started.
Of say green, and you didn't have any green, so you threw a yellow in there. All of a sudden, it's now yellow, and you're going to win the trick because everyone else threw in
had
green.
to play green, yeah.
And then if you won the second, second, which is the present. Then you move on to the future, and you would be setting that one as well.
Right.
So this is a wildly difficult game to play and predict on how you are going to win tricks.
It is so
it's
interesting.
Insanely cool.
It's so awesome.
And you do this 4 times. You do 4 rounds, I believe, of this, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. So for that round, if I'd said I was going to win 4 tricks, and I did, I will get 8 points on the board. And if I'd not succeeded or I'd got too many, I'd get 0, which happened to me several times. And you just do this whole scenario 4 times. And I know it doesn't translate super well into explaining when you don't have this stuff in front of you. But believe us when we say it, that this is one of the absolute coolest greatest trick-taking games out there.
So cool.
And it has a Christmas theme on it, which you would obviously
I would play this in June,
about.
July, September, Halloween.
The Christmas doesn't really come through per se.
I would play it at any time.
Oh, it's fantastic. We played this a couple weeks ago with Chris and Scott and a whole bunch of people. But oh my goodness, what a great game!
Mind-bending trick-taking game. It's
Needless
so
to say,
fun.
We are going to be tracking this one down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it is fantastic. So that is the Ghosts of Christmas. Excellent trick-taking game. If you like trick-taking games, you definitely want this. And the second game we're going to talk about, just quickly, we're going to mention is Meadow. And Meadow is from Rebel Studios and Asmodee. And this is a fantastic little game about finding little creatures in the woods and talking about what you saw in the woods around the campfire. But we are not going to go right into this game. We are going to be talking about this in full, doing a review of it on our podcast this week. So you can hear about it on episode 31.
And we've got Apple Podcasts working.
Yes, it's on Apple. Everything's on Apple now. So
we've had struggles with that for apparently a long time. So sorry.
The Meeple
but
Dungeon,
it's there now.
You can find it everywhere. But we're going to run. Check out our next episode. We'll be dropping probably on the weekend, episode 31. We will see you next week. Cheers.
See ya.
Hey there, this is Norm from the Cardboard Conjecture podcast and Bridge City Board Gamers here in Saskatoon. And as we always do, let's go see what the Bridge City Board Gamers community has been playing. Let's start off with Hans. I'll give you one guess what his first game is. Yeah, Terraforming Mars, Stroganoff, Isle of Cats, Tussie Mussy, and Smoothies. I think Smoothies that might be that in that Capstone series of kind of family games, easy to learn. I've heard things, but I haven't heard a lot. And I mean, everyone was happy when they talked about it. Tussie Mussy, that is from Elizabeth Hargraves, who did Wingspan. She created a little 18-card card drafting game. It's pretty cool. And Isle of Cats, Polyominoes, right on. That's a pretty wide range. And of course, that engine builder there, referred to as Terraforming Mars. Let's see, Jeff. Jeff has Corrosion, Origins First Builders, Isle of Cats, Dominant Species. Yeah. I could go on for hours about how much I love that game. Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North, Cascadia, Quacks of Quedlinburg, and Cape May. You know, Cape May has drawn interest for a couple reasons. One, it's a solo game at 1 to 4 players, but the art and I don't know, that theme kind of just compels me, and I don't know why. Origins First Builders, that is, I think it's Board and Dice, the publishers, and they're pretty good at having a solid lineup of designers that represent their label. So wonderful. And Cascadia, that was, I think that was my favorite game from last year. And what a great game. So yeah, cool. Jeff, well done. Travis, tried Boone Lake last night. Thought it was good. Doesn't quite have the magic of Great Western Trail and Maracaibo, but I definitely play again, and I think it would take a couple more plays to get a better feel and judgment for it. Definitely identified many mistakes I made and things I need to focus more on next time. Managed a score of 195 for a 3-player game. Well done. Others have played before once, so I found a couple of tile actions, didn't get much use, but it could be just our play group. Now that I'm talking about it, I really want to try it again. And you know, that's the funny thing is you pretty much described my entry into the game. I love Great Western Trail. Maracaibo's fantastic, and I have other titles of his, Blackout Hong Kong, I like the way his brain works as far as a designer goes. And I'm pretty, you know what, I guarantee you play it a couple more times, you'll see the depth and the interconnectivity of it. and how strategic and tactical it can be at the same time, depending on who you're playing with, right? Because you can step on the gas and leave people in like in Maracaibo, you can step on the gas and leave people in the back end not getting enough actions as you did. So yeah, I want to play it now. Eli, more Cthulhu, Death May Die, Reload, and Monolith Arena. Nice. Monolith Arena is a reinterpretation of Nirishima Hex. So if you like the Nirishima Hex, what a fun game. It's kind of what did I call it? I made reference to it when I was talking to Rolling Dice and Taking Names, Marty and Tony, that they talked about it and they pitched it for the hype train, and justifiably so, that you program all these movements or all these actions in a game, a battle, one-on-one battle, and then when a certain trigger point happens, it goes in initiative order, and you just run the script and watch the mayhem and carnage and chaos take place, because some of the program stuff you thought were going to go, somebody might have put an initiative order attack before that and taken that out. So yeah, it's fun. It's such a fun game. And Monolith Arena takes it and amps it up just one more with that whole idea of a monolith. Dan, Game Club, The Thing Infection at Outbreak 31. Nice. If that's a school game club, ooh, that could be dangerous when you have the hidden traitor, because a lot of people will hang on to grudges at that age. Or at any age. Who am I kidding? All right, Tim. A couple of games of Azul, and that's it. And you know what? That's probably enough brain candy to make everybody happy. So well done. Well done. Jonathan, Survive Escape from Atlantis a couple times with my 6 and 4-year-old, with quite a bit of help from me. Well, you can help me next time I play that game. Karuba with the 6-year-old, and Viscounts. I don't think the kids played Viscounts, but who knows, right? Exceptional learners. John, same old, National Pro Hockey and Sentinels of Earth Prime *3. And I think he means he played that 3 times. So, National Pro Hockey. Man, I could feel the skates just lacing up. Yeah, I said laces. That's how old I am. Marianne played Kahlua. And I'm not referring to any beverage escapades. It is. It looks like a cute little island game of. It looks like there's some Meeple. I'm just trying to interpret what I see for images here. Yeah, it looks like a little Meeple island, maybe control thing. It looks cute. Right on. And at my side of the table here, I'm going to pump up ToonCon. ToonCon happened, and I had the opportunity to go Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and played a bunch of games. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'm going to talk about a couple in particular. And what a wonderful event. Thank you so much to the ToonCon organizers for trying to get this post-COVID reality of board gaming kind of off on its feet. So, yay. And I think everybody had a good time. It wasn't the big crowd that ToonCon's used to, but it was a crowd nonetheless. And of course, capped off with the Saturday auction, where I believe I was witness to an original copy of Battlestar Galactica go for over $300, I think, yes. And then there was another game, I can't remember, I'd have to consult, but there was another game that sold for over $250. So, yay! Well, and then there's a whole bunch of others that sold for a couple bucks, but there was some unicorn hunting going on, and I mean that metaphorically. I don't prescribe to that kind of hunting of mythical and imaginary creatures. So what I had an opportunity to play was Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle, their new board game company, Motor City Games, and Adam Hill. Sorry, Adam. They put out Three Sisters, which is when I had the opportunity to interview Matt Riddle, and is the second in the trilogy of their roll and write, and I like to call them Cascade point system games, because that's what you're doing. You're wanting things to just get to a point where something triggers something else, which cascades into something else, which cascades into something else. And then you get this beautiful rush in your brain thinking, I'm so smart. I set that all up to have happen. Yay. Well, I played 2 games. And then because I have the game, it's off the shelf of shame now because I played it at ToonCon. And when I got home, I played a bunch of solo games. And I have Fleet the Dice game, which was the first in this series, and I think they're. I'm gonna mispronounce the title, mistitle it. Motor City is the third one, and so the Fleet the Dice game started this whole idea of their cascade system, and I'm kind of visualizing their roll and write tableau, which is 2 paths. Right, 2 different paths that represent a left side and a right side, which is very similar to what they kept going in Three Sisters. Before I continue, Three Sisters, thematically speaking, you are gardening. You are growing plants, flowers, vegetables. You have a shed. You have pumpkin patch. Now, how this works is the concept of Three Sisters, me being the history social studies teacher, love it. From the Great Lakes area, pre-colonization, the nations that existed in that area had developed an agricultural style and an efficient and sufficient agricultural style referred to as the Three Sisters. And what it is, you start off with corn, which is basically a fundamental crop, but the corn itself has a structure that the bean, which is the second, travels up. So now you have, you have that whole idea in gardening where you're trying to have partnered gardening, but we're not done yet. Three Sisters. The third is squash, and in this case, there's pumpkins. And the squash itself has enough leaf cover that it protects the ground cover. And it helps retain the moisture, helps basically protect that plant. So this synergy of these 3 plants symbiotically working and growing together became an agricultural movement that is duplicated and replicated throughout different spots in the world and throughout civilization. So it's one of those ingenious moments that intelligence is applicable to observations in nature, and you come up with this game, which is so cool. I got off on a little lesson. I'm so sorry. I will never do that again. I just fibbed again. So Three Sisters, you roll the dice, and they've used this time a rondelle. The first fleet was basically you rolled the dice and you picked one and you basically went around and depleted that stock. In this case, similar situation, but it's placed on a rondelle because it represents 2 tiers of actions. The first action is whatever dice that you pick off this rondelle, the pips, right? Like if I pick up a 3, then I'm looking in my garden in the 3 zone, the third area of my garden, the 3 zone, and I have to decide to either start 2 new plants, or to water that area. And so that's what you do, depending on the 1 to 6 and where they sit on the rondelle. Now, the second part is the spot where you pick it off the rondelle, underneath is another action related to other parts of the board. And most likely it is the right-hand side of the board or the bottom part of the board where there's perennials and there's so many tracks and there's so many triggers, it would take a review. Maybe it's going to be reviewed. No, of course, yeah, I'm going to review this one coming up right away. There's so many interconnected engines or micro engines or booster packs or whatever you want to call it, because the shed itself is where you can start to design these little micro engines that work with what's going on. If you're doing a lot of gardening, then you look in the shed to see, okay, what's going to help me water more? Oh, on a rain, I can do this. And you start to see where things plug into each other. And every time that I've played it, by the solo part, I start to recognize how this could pair up, or even a group of these might work together in a cycle. I love watching other people play this when we're at ToonCon. Me watching and learning my board, I was also watching it and observing what other players were doing with their choices and learning from what they did. And there's some choices that I would have never considered and thought, wow, I can see the potential there. So, yay! That was Three Sisters. We also played Rococo. There's some other games, but Rococo. The more I play this game, and I have, just to back up a little bit here, I had the opportunity to pick up one of the original copies from a Bridge City Board Gamer member. Thank you, Jason. And because there was a Kickstarter coming up with the big elaborate Eagle Griffin box and the gorgeous Ian O'Toole art and the beefed up components. I was a big fan. I just wanted to play the game to have the gaming experience. I wasn't too caught up in the whole whirlwind of the hype of the Kickstarter, so I immediately picked it up. Man, this is. Oh, I understand now why a lot of people, why when this was out of print and a lot of people wanted this, to play this game. It's a great game. Thematically speaking, you are a wardrobe maker, a dress builder, a pantalon and coat builder, and you are dressing the nobles for a party at Versailles, in Louis's court. And it's area control. It's a awesome deck builder. It is so much push-pull. There is still more for me to discover with this game, but it is easy to pick up and easy to play and maybe difficult to master. I don't know if there's any mastery involved because I'm just having so much fun playing it. So that was, let's cut that short. Impossible. But that was the two games that I wanted to quickly mention that I got to play this week. And once again, thank you so much, ToonCon, for providing an opportunity like that for the hobbyists of this awesome, the hobbyists of this awesome hobby. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much for all the energy and all the effort that you guys put in every year to make this happen. And thank you so much for listening all the way to the end here. And thank you always to the contributors who make this episode a reality. And that being said, keep your stick on the ice and take care out there, eh?